All right, so the good news is there's only one rust hole and it's around the valve stem. Now the bad news is there's one rust hole and it's around the valve stem. So we got to fix this. We've got to weld it up and see if we can't make it pretty. All right, I had to move the show indoors. This is a few days after I filmed that intro, and all day long it's been raining. It's been raining buckets. So I brought all this inside. I want to get this done. So before I weld this thing, I need to wire brush the area around where the valve stem comes through, because that's where the rust hole is, and that's where the metal has really gotten its thinnest. I've already chipped off all the scale, and so I'm going to wire brush this, and then following the wire brush, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to wire brush the back of that as well. And then I want to put some POR 15 rust inhibitor on here, or rust converter, and I need to do that before I actually start to weld it, because I want to make sure that I'm down to the bare metal and I'm not including any of that rust into my weld. But before I do any of that, I'm probably going to end up welding over the hole that the valve stem comes through. So the first thing I need to do is I need to measure that hole to make sure that when I go back and re-drill it, I'm re-drilling it the proper size. So I'm just using a pair of dial calipers. That'll be close enough. Depending on where you measure the hole, because it's a little oblong from years of use and the rust itself. It comes out to 645 thousandths, which is roughly 21/32. So I'm going to write that 21/32 right on the rim, so I don't forget it and it's there when I come back. Now the other thing that I have to do is I have to determine where that hole is going to be positioned to the edge of the rim. So I'm not going to do anything real sophisticated. I'm just going to use a machinist ruler, and I'm going to measure the center, or the approximate center of that hole from the edge of the from the edge of the rim, and we'll come up with something that's close enough so I can repeat it. So from this section of the rim, from this roll-off, at the top of this roll-off, it's 2 inches. So I'm just going to add that 2 inches to those numbers on the side of the rim. Its position lengthwise or around that radius, I'm not too concerned about that. If I'm close to somewhere in the right area, it's not going to matter, because the valve stem will come through just fine. But what I am going to do is I'm going to sort of pick a spot in the center, and I'm going to just make a line with my marker that will pick up that center. And I think what I might do is the same thing here. And actually this entire section, which is where that rim rolls over, that's pretty much center to the hole as well. So those will be good references when I go back to put those holes in. All right, so let's go ahead and wire brush this. And I'm using a cordless drill with a cup wire wheel on it. All right. And once you know it, when I wire brush the surface rust off, another scab of rust flake shows up. So I need to get that chipped off as well. All right, that came out really good. That's really nice and shiny. It's almost down to bare metal right now. So I'm going to flip this over off camera. I'm going to wire brush and scrape down the other side. I'm going to put some POR 15, as I said, on this, and I'm going to let that dry for a day or two to really do a good job at converting all that rust into oxide and iron oxide. And then we'll be good. We're going to weld it up. All right, so the POR 15 has had a couple days to do what it's supposed to do, and you can see we have this really nice white coating of phosphate. So we're ready to weld. Give me a couple minutes to set all this up and we'll get to it. So a couple things before I start welding. First off, this material has gotten so thin that I've turned the welder way down because I'm afraid I'm going to burn through it if I get it too hot to start with. I'm going to build up layers of weld. That's my intention. I've also backed this up with some copper. We do this when we weld gun parts together. We'll back them up with the copper because we need some way to ensure that the connections are good. So we'll back them up with copper, and I've done the same thing here. So hopefully the copper will help prevent the weld from going through and give it something to build up on. The second thing is I'm a little worried about spatter, so I've got this E-Weld spatter spray that I'm going to use. So hopefully I can keep some of that spattering from going all over my shop. I don't know how easy all that looked, but the reality is it was a bitch. It took me a long time to weld this. This looks really nice, but the effort that went into this was huge. The metal was so thin because of the rust that I could not weld any of it without backing it up with this piece of copper. Now this is a thin piece of copper, and I had to bend it to match every radius and then clamp it to the rim, because if I didn't back it up with the copper, every time I welded it, it would want to burn through. So I had to bend it and fit it, no matter where it was I was trying to weld this to, in order to get that heat sink that I needed, something I could build the weld metal up onto. Now, you can see at the end, it came out really nice. But I had to stitch this. I had to do a little bit of weld, grind it, a little bit of weld, grind it, move the copper. So it took a lot of work to get this done. Now it looks really nice now, and I'm happy enough with it. So this is not a restoration as much as it is a repair. So at the end, it looks good. It'll look good when it's done. So I want to anneal it, and then I need to re-drill the hole for the valve stem and wire brush it, get all the rust scale off, and then prime and paint it. And then when I get that done, I can bring it to the tire store and get this tire remounted. All right, so that's this episode. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.